The sky split open with no warning. 1 second, the stars were calm above the farming valley. The next, fire rained from the heavens like angry arrows. People screamed as sonic booms cracked across the clouds. Something had entered Earth's atmosphere without permission. And it wasn't human. Jake stumbled out of his small repair shed, grease on his hands and wrench still in his grip. He looked up just in time to see the burning object streak across the sky. It wasn't falling straight. It zigzagged like something trying to fly but barely holding together. Then it vanished behind the forested cliffs to the east. Seconds later, the mountain shook. A blast of fire lit up the horizon. The ground trembled under his boots. No one else had seen it in the nearby town. The official reports said nothing crashed, just a meteor. But Jake knew what a meteor looked like. This thing had metal edges and pulsing lights. It was a ship. And someone was inside it. He packed tools, a flashlight, and a first aid kit. It wasn't the first time he had helped hikers in trouble. But nothing in his quiet life had prepared him for what he would find beyond those trees. The air grew thick, with smoke and the scent of scorched earth. Trees had been leveled in a long path leading to a glowing crater. Inside the impact zone lay a strange, silver-black ship, half buried in the ground. The hull was cracked. Parts still hissed with steam. Jake stepped closer, cautiously. Then he heard a voice. Not English, not any human language. But it was calling out, weak and pained. He crawled inside the ship's open hatch. Sparks flew from panels. Strange symbols blinked red. And then he saw her. Curled against the wall was a young alien woman. Her skin shimmered like amethyst in the light. Her green hair stuck to her forehead, and her breathing was ragged. Her armored suit was cracked at the chest and leg. She looked at him through half-lidded, glowing eyes. Her lips parted, trying to speak. Jake didn't understand her words, but he understood the fear in her face, and the pain. She was alone, injured, and probably afraid he was going to hurt her. But he knelt beside her and said calmly, "It's okay, I'm here to help." She stared at him for a long moment, then closed her eyes and passed out. He didn't leave her there. He pulled her out, careful not to touch any wounds. He carried her on his back all the way through the forest. She was heavier than she looked, but Jake didn't stop. He brought her to his shed and laid her on a cot, cleaned her wounds, and made sure she could breathe. For hours, she didn't wake. But her body glowed faintly, healing in ways he didn't understand. Her ship's core, whatever powered it, was still active. And he knew someone or something might come looking for it. He had to hide it. So he spent the next day moving tarp, brush, and scrap to cover the wreckage before anyone else could see. When she finally opened her eyes again, it was night. Jake sat nearby, sipping from a mug. The alien girl blinked slowly and tried to sit up. She winced in pain, and he gently helped her lean back. She said something again in her strange language, and this time, she touched her chest, then pointed to him. Her eyes were soft now, not afraid. Curious, he shook his head. "I don't know what you're saying. But you're safe here." She watched him carefully. Then, slowly, she reached up and touched his cheek. Her skin was cool and smooth. She looked at him like she had never seen anything like him before. The next morning, Jake returned to the wreck and brought back strange parts he thought might help. The girl watched him, still weak, but her gaze followed his every move. Her armor suit had a small screen that flickered to life. A new voice came from it, this time translated. "You have saved me." "That is not expected from your kind." "Why?" Jake hesitated. "Because it was the right thing to do." There was silence. Then the translator spoke again. "You expect no reward?" Jake shrugged. "You were hurt. I help people. Or aliens, I guess." The girl's eyes widened. Then she smiled just slightly. The translator flickered again. "You have fixed more than my ship. You may not understand yet, but I owe you. My bond, Jake didn't know what that meant. Not yet, but something had changed between them. Something important. And deep in the woods, far beyond the reach of human law, a promise was silently made between two souls from different worlds. Jake didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he kept hearing that soft voice from the translator. You have fixed more than my ship. You may not understand yet, but I owe you my bond. He sat outside the shed under the moonlight, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, she had come from, a world he couldn't even imagine. And now she was here, breathing his air, lying in his old cot with her broken armor resting beside her like the shell of some fallen warrior. The next morning, Jake cooked eggs and toast. He wasn't sure if she could eat human food. Still, when he brought her the plate, she looked at it, sniffed it carefully, and took a bite. Her eyes widened with surprise. Then she ate the rest without hesitation. That afternoon, she tried to stand. Jake rushed over to help, but she waved him off gently. She wobbled, then braced herself on the table. Her wounds were healing faster than he expected. The glowing blue lines on her skin seemed brighter today. She walked outside slowly, taking in the trees, the sunlight, and the quiet wind. When she looked back at him, there was a strange look in her eyes. Not confusion, not fear. It was something else, like recognition. The translator activated again. Your planet has silence. I did not expect this. My world has no quiet. Only storms and fire. This is strange to my blood. Jake chuckled. It's just the countryside. I've lived here since I was born. The alien girl tilted her head. You do not leave? He shook his head. No family, no job in the city. Just me and the tools. She paused, then said, you fix things. Including me. Jake blinked. I only did what anyone would do. But the girl looked at him seriously. No, others would not. You carried me. You hid my ship. You fed me. That is more than repair. That is bond. He didn't know what to say. Her culture was clearly different. Maybe she had a warrior code. Or maybe this bond was some custom he didn't fully understand yet. Still, something told him it mattered to her deeply. Later that day, she followed him to the crash site. Though still weak, she examined the ship with care. Jake handed her tools. She didn't speak much, but she worked with steady hands. Every now and then, her eyes met his. And in those silent glances, something passed between them. At one point, her fingers brushed his as they both reached for the same panel. She didn't pull away. Jake didn't either. There was heat there, not just from the sparks or the sun, something else. Something real. They worked until nightfall. When it became too dark, she activated a device on her wrist that cast a soft blue light over the ship. It illuminated her face in a way that made Jake forget how far from normal this situation really was. Back at the shed, she sat on the floor while Jake explained how human tools worked. She listened closely, nodding, and even repeated a few words. In English, her accent was sharp but pleasant. She seemed to enjoy learning. Then she asked, "Why are you alone?" Jake hesitated. "Just the way life turned out, I guess." The translator took a second, then replied, "Strange. In my world, the alone are taken into clans. No one is left to drift." He looked at her. "Maybe your world has more heart than mine." She didn't answer, but she stood up, walked over, and sat beside him. The room fell into a soft silence. Outside, the wind blew through the trees. Inside, an alien girl leaned slightly against a human mechanic, as if they had known each other longer than just 2 days. Before falling asleep, she said something in her own language. The translator tried to catch it but failed. Jake didn't need to know the words. He understood the feeling behind them. In her mind, something had already been decided. The next morning, Jake found her already outside. She had disassembled one of the broken panels from her ship, and laid out its strange glow in pieces in perfect order. It looked like she was planning a full repair. He walked over with a mug of coffee and offered it to her. She took it, sniffed it again like she always did, then sipped. This time she didn't even flinch. Her eyes looked a little brighter today. She pointed at the ship and said in clear English, "We fixed today." Jake raised an eyebrow. "We?" She smiled and nodded. Then pointed at him again. "You fix. I lead." The two worked all morning. Jake handed her his strongest wrenches and tried to follow her alien instructions, some of which included gestures he didn't understand. But she was patient, and when he made mistakes, she corrected him with a small shake of the head, never angry. At noon, she removed part of the core from the ship and motioned for him to hold it steady. The core pulsed with a deep red glow. Jake's hands trembled slightly. He had no idea what would happen if he dropped it. But her hands moved with such confidence. He found strength in copying her calm. As the sun climbed higher, the ship began to look less like wreckage and more like a real machine again. The girl activated a few systems. Lights blinked. Panels shifted. The ship responded to her touch. Jake couldn't help but admire her. Not just her appearance, though she was undeniably stunning, but the way she worked, the quiet strength, the steady eyes. She was not just beautiful, she was capable. Later that evening, while they rested by a small campfire Jake had built, she stared into the flames for a long time. Then said softly, "You ask no questions. Why?" Jake shrugged. "You'll tell me when you're ready." She glanced at him with an unreadable expression. "I was on a run. Not war, not invasion. Delivery mission. Someone tried to shoot me down. Not your people. Others. Far worse." Jake's chest tightened. "Someone tried to kill you?" She nodded. "They track energy signatures. My people call them void seekers. They silence planets and steal what they find. They think I'm dead now." That night, Jake stood guard while she slept inside. He stayed up, thinking about what she said. If they thought she was dead, maybe they would leave Earth alone. But what if they came back to finish the job? The next morning, she woke early again. This time, when she walked toward him, she had removed the upper armor pieces and replaced them with a woven wrap made from his spare cloth. Her movements were relaxed. And when she looked at him, she smiled without hesitation. She placed her hand on her chest, then on his. "Life bond," she said. Jake blinked. "What does that mean?" Her eyes didn't look away. The translator took a second, then spoke clearly. "It means I have chosen. In my culture, when one saves another in death and expects nothing, they are worthy. Bond is for life. I choose you." He took a step back, stunned. "Wait, like marriage?" The translator buzzed. "Similar, but deeper. Not law. Soul." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "You barely know me." The alien girl tilted her head. "Time is not the test. Action is. You saved me, you protected me, you worked beside me. You did not abandon. That is enough, for the first time." Jake didn't know what to say. A small part of him felt flattered, another part terrified. This wasn't a relationship like humans knew. This was something sacred. To her, it was already decided. She stood in front of him, hand extended. "Life bond is not forced. You choose or you walk." Jake looked at her hand, then into her eyes. His heart pounded. He thought about the quiet days he spent alone, the nights fixing broken things, and this strange, fierce girl from the stars. Standing here now, waiting for his answer, he reached out and took her hand. The bond was accepted without a word. Asterisk, the bond changed things, though Jake didn't fully understand how yet. She began to stay closer to him. When they worked on the ship, she touched his arm more often. When they ate, she sat beside him instead of across. And when they spoke, her voice had softened. She told him her name slowly, in broken syllables he could barely pronounce. But he tried. She smiled every time he said it right. Jayla. He told her his name too, and she repeated it carefully. Jake was simple enough. Still, the way she said it sounded different. Like it meant something more than just a name. That afternoon, the ship powered up. The core pulsed steady blue, and a low hum filled the forest. Jayla looked proud. Jake stood beside her amazed. The ship was flying again, even if it hadn't left the ground. Jayla tapped on a control panel. A small screen blinked to life. Her face turned serious. There is signal. A weak one. The Seekers may have found part of my trail. Jake leaned closer. You mean the ones who shot you down? She nodded. They do not stop. They erase. If they come here, your people will not survive. Jake's stomach sank. Then we warn. Them, the government, the army. She shook her head. Your people will not believe. And even if they did, they are not ready. The Seekers burn first, then speak. Jake looked at her ship. Can we fight them? Jayla's eyes narrowed. Not yet, but we can hide and prepare. If the ship fully restores, I can send a false echo signal. Trick them. Jake didn't know how alien tech worked, but he trusted her. If she said it could buy them time, then they had to try. They worked for hours, tuning the signal emitter. Jayla climbed inside narrow panels while Jake held wires in place. At one point, he slipped on the slick metal and nearly fell. She caught him fast, her arms strong. Their eyes met, and neither looked away. As night fell, the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Jayla stopped moving and closed her eyes. There's something here. Jake stood still. Animals? She shook her head. No, machine sound. Distant. Not yours. He grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. The woods were still. Then he heard it too, a soft mechanical clicking. Far off, not like anything from Earth. Jayla touched his arm. They're scouting. We must stay hidden. If they see us, they mark us. Back at the shed, they shut down all lights. Jayla wrapped the ship's core in shielding fabric. Jake locked the doors and grabbed the old rifle his father left him. It was rusted but loaded. They didn't sleep, just waited. Every branch snap made Jake flinch. Jayla sat near the door, her knife across her lap. Her eyes didn't blink. She was ready to fight if needed. Hours passed. The sound faded. The machine had moved on. For now, Jayla finally exhaled. We survived the scan, but they will return. Next time stronger. Jake nodded. Then we better be ready. Jayla looked at him long, then reached out and took his hand again. You still choose Bond, even with danger? Jake didn't hesitate. Yes. Jayla closed her eyes and leaned her head against his shoulder. That night, they didn't feel like two strangers from different worlds. They felt like one. The sun rose behind a wall of dark clouds. Jake stood outside the shed, watching the sky with narrow eyes. Something felt different today. The wind was dry and sharp. The birds were silent. Even the insects had stopped. Inside, Jayla checked the ship's systems again. Her fingers moved fast across the glowing controls. The false echo is ready, but it can only trick them once. Jake stepped in. Then we better use it at the right time. Jayla turned. We launch it tonight. After that, they will believe. I fled in another direction. We will have days. Maybe weeks. Jake nodded. And after that? Jayla didn't answer for a long moment. Then she said, then they returned to erase everything. They spent the afternoon preparing for the launch. Jayla climbed inside the ship to connect the pulse device. Jake helped carry the heat cores and stacked the shielding plates around. The emitter. The energy from the device vibrated in his bones. Jayla explained it was like throwing a loud voice across the galaxy. The Seekers would hear it and follow that sound instead of the real one. But if they detected the trick, they would know someone was helping her. Jake took that risk seriously. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of this now. Bonded, chosen. And if they came, they wouldn't just be hunting her. They'd be hunting him too. As evening fell, Jayla dressed in her full armor again. The cracks had been sealed. The plates were smooth and glowing now. She looked like a warrior from legend. Strong, calm, dangerous. Jake stood beside her with a thick coat, his father's rifle strapped to his back. Not as shiny as yours, but it'll have to do. Jayla smiled softly. You carry more than metal. You carry intent. They hiked through the forest until they reached the ridge above the crater. Jayla set the device in the center, tapped a command, and stepped back. Once it starts, no turning back. Jake gave her a nod. Let's do it. Jayla touched the panel. The core pulsed once. Then again. A third time, stronger. Then a wave of energy exploded outward without sound. The trees shook. The air went still. The signal was sent. They ran back through the woods as the device collapsed on itself, vanishing into ash. Jayla's ship, now completely buried under foliage and tarp, stayed dark, hidden, safe. Back at the shed they waited. Hours passed. Jayla checked the readings. They took the bait. They are chasing the echo, Jake exhaled. That buys us time, Jayla nodded. Time to decide. My ship will be ready in 2 nights. I can leave or stay. But if I stay, your people may see me. That is risk for you. Jake looked at her. And if you leave? She hesitated. Then I vanish. But the bond remains. I will always feel it. Always hear you inside me. Jake sat on the bench outside and looked at the stars. I've never been wanted like that before. Jayla stepped close. You fixed my ship. You gave me shelter. But more than that, you gave me a choice. No one ever gave me that before. He looked up at her. Then what will you choose? She reached down, took his hand, and sat beside him. Her voice was quiet, but her answer was clear. I choose you. The next morning came with a storm in the sky. Clouds rolled over the hills, heavy with wind and warning. Jayla stood at the edge of the trees, her armor catching the first light of day. Her eyes were calm, but her body was tense. Jake joined her quietly. What are you thinking? She didn't look away from the horizon. They've changed direction. One of their scouts broke away. It may come here, alone. Jake's grip tightened on the rifle. Then we make sure it doesn't find us. Jayla shook her head. No, if we destroy it, the rest will know. We cannot strike. We must mislead. She led Jake deep into the forest. There, using broken parts from her old panel and a decoy pulse core, they built a false outpost. Jayla explained it would act as a temporary distraction. If the scout scanned it, it would look like her ship had limped away and died. As they finished, Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. You sure this will work? Jayla looked at him. I am not sure of anything. Except the bond. They moved silently through the woods as the day passed. Every shadow looked like it moved. Every sound felt too sharp. Then, just before sundown, Jayla froze. Her hand shot up. Jake dropped low behind a log. A black shape hovered in the distance. No wings, no sound. Just silent motion, smooth-like. Liquid. A single glowing red eye turned toward the false outpost. Jake held his breath. The thing scanned the decoy for nearly 10 minutes. Then, without warning, it drifted upward and vanished into the clouds. Jayla stood up slowly. It believes the lie. But it will not report now. It watches. We have 1 night before it speaks. Back at the shed, they made their final plans. Jayla placed a map on the table. It showed the stars, the safe zones, and her people's nearest contact ship. Jake stared at it. You going to them? Jayla nodded. If I reach them, I can call a protector. One of our larger ships. It can defend this sector, but I must leave. And you must stay hidden. Jake's chest tightened. And if something happens to you? She touched his hand. If I fall, the bond does not break. It only quiets. They sat beside the fire. That night, no words, just warmth. Jake looked at her face lit by flame. He memorized every line, every shadow, every breath. When she finally stood, she didn't speak. She simply walked to him, placed her forehead against his, and let the moment speak for her. The next morning, Gila stood by the ship. It was fully repaired now, humming with silent power. Jake helped her load the last of the energy cells. "You know where to go?" She nodded. "I marked the course. If the stars are kind, I'll return in 4 cycles." Jake gave a small smile. "Then I'll keep the fire burning." Jayla stepped forward and kissed his cheek. Then she climbed into the ship. The panels closed. Lights brightened. The engine lifted with no sound, only pressure in the air. Leaves scattered as the ship rose through the trees. Jake watched her disappear into the clouds. Then the forest was still. 4 cycles had passed since she left. Jake counted each one by carving a mark into the wooden post outside the shed. Every morning, he checked the sky. Every night, he kept the fire burning just like he promised. No other ships came. No seekers. No scouts, only silence and wind. It felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. Jake kept busy. He fixed old machines in town and brought food to the nearby settlement. People asked where he had been for weeks. He just said, helping someone. But at night, when the fire crackled low, his mind always returned to her, Jayla, the one who fell from the stars and changed everything with her voice and her eyes. Then, on the 5th night of the 4th cycle, he heard it, a low hum, distant at first. He rushed outside and saw a light tear across the sky. It was brighter than the stars. And it was slowing. He ran to the clearing by the ridge. His heart pounded like a drum. Trees bent under the force of a silent wind. Then, through the smoke and light, her ship descended. The panels opened. A tall figure stepped out. She wore the same armor, but cleaner, sharper. And she was smiling. Jayla crossed the distance and stopped just before him. Her eyes shimmered with that same quiet fire. "You kept the fire burning," Jake smiled. "You found your people?" She nodded. "I brought one of our guardians. It now watches your sky. This place is protected. The seekers will not return." Jake looked up, feeling the weight finally lift from his chest. "You came back." Jayla stepped closer. "The bond called me. I heard it every night. Even in the stars." Jake reached out and touched her hand. It was real, warm, alive. She leaned forward and whispered something in her own tongue. The translator didn't activate. It didn't need to. Jake understood her without the words. That night, they sat by the fire again. But this time, there was no fear. No silence. Just 2 souls who had chosen each other against all reason and all distance. In the morning, they worked side by side again. Not just to survive, but to build. Jake's world had changed forever the day her ship crashed. And now, with her by his side, it would never be the same again. He didn't fix her ship just to help a stranger. He fixed it because it led her home. To him.